I am a law enforcement officer of 6 years. I just wanted to let you guys know that anything I say is my opinion and mine only. It does not reflect my current department's opinion or law enforcement as a whole. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Secret Society of Man podcast. I'm here again with my cousin Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about a cruise line that was supposed to be setting sail, and it's a deal where they gave passengers the ability to buy a cabin in the cruise line, which they're calling villas, for the entire period that this ship remains operational, which they expect to be 15 years. So it's an extremely long-term lease or renting of a space on that cruise ship for $100,000 plus a monthly fee going forward. And people are excited to get onto this cruise line and begin their forever journey on this cruise. But then it was delayed in its voyage, and so they've been stuck in Belfast for a period of months waiting to take sail. Many of them are stuck in that town because they've brought their pets with them and they're not allowed to leave. They've pretty much gone to all the bars, heard all the music. They're getting sick of Belfast. Yeah. But it sounds like they're about to be taking sail next week.
Mm-hmm. My thoughts on that, when I first read the story, I saw the 3-year cruise ship, or like a 3-year stint on this thing. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that is way too long. I've never been on a cruise, so I don't know. I have no litmus test from, what's the average one, like a month? 2 weeks?
My dad is a cruiser, him and his wife, and they go for, maybe like 7 to 10 days.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so about 2 weeks.
Short. Yeah, regular vacation.
Okay. So this 3 years thing, when I thought about it, it reminded me of, you ever seen the Disney movie WALL-E?
Yeah.
Okay. So it reminded me where everyone's in space and they're on this ship and it's essentially a resort and they're all fat. Yeah. And they're just getting fed this all this junk food or whatever they want, and that kind of is what it made it seem like.
Yeah, that's, I think, the appeal of a cruise is for people that want to be living like Khans for 10 days. Like they're the leader of the Mongol army. Like they don't have to worry about anything. They just go and a drink comes into their hands. Like that's the experience that they want.
I feel like that would get very dry though. For example, you and I have both gone to the Minnesota State Fair already. Yeah. Imagine that. I mean, the State Fair for us is probably, 6 to 8 blocks wide, roughly. Imagine, so you get all the food you want. There's rides. It's essentially sustainable. I'm sure you could find a bed if you wanted. If someone's like, hey, you don't have to worry about money being here. You eat whatever you want, whatever, for 3.5 years, 3 years, whatever it may be, I would say no. Because after a while, you'd be like, oh, it's the 49th time I've had a Prano pup. Eventually that pleasure's got to be gone, right? You see the same thing every week. Like it's like come to this carnival or come to it's the same water park. It's the same thing.
Same people.
The same people. Yeah. And go ahead.
I was going to say, we're not the target demographic. These are people that are ready to check out of life. You said the people on WALL-E. I was actually thinking back to when I was in middle school or early high school, and they started talking about how pretty soon we're going to have passenger voyages to Mars. Yeah. Remember that? Yeah. There was going to be a Mars colony. Yep. I think it might have been Elon Musk, But they were going to send a group of people. They had the people picked out who were going to go on Mars for however many months or years that trip takes. And then they were going to go live for the rest of their lives on a Mars colony, one-way trip. And I was just thinking even back then, why would you want to leave everything behind, everything you care about, everything you enjoy, to go live out in Mars? These are the same people that would have taken that opportunity to take a one-way trip to Mars, except that technology isn't available yet. So instead, they're going to be going on a cruise.
Also, yes, you were correct. I think the story had mentioned that the couple that they highlighted essentially had left everything behind. They kind of had all their loose ends tied up, and they were ready to go on this trip, right? I don't understand the no fear of, we've seen what happened in the Suez Canal or whatever, where all the microchips for all these cars and stuff took years to get because the ship crashed in the canal. Or what about the other one that collapsed on its side and the passengers were stuck on there for like however long it was? The toilets weren't working. They're basically like in their own feces.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's cool. Like you said, they visit pretty much all the countries, it sounded like. Almost all the countries. All different kinds of ports. Like, that's cool. I just feel like it would just get boring after like even a month, like even to stretch it out to like a 4-week vacation. Like after that, it'd be like, well, we got 35 months to go, on this same ship.
They don't even want to deal with time. They're not even going to think about it. It's Hotel California. You don't know how long you've been there.
They're probably playing it on there.
Yeah, exactly, the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think that's just all they just want to be pampered. They want to see the world, which this is an effective way to do that, to be able to see the world. They'll see more countries than I ever will. But they want no stress. They don't want to think about anything. They're never going to watch the news again. I guarantee they're not going to play any news station on there. They don't know what's going on in the outside world. All they know is the bars that they go to, the shuffleboard area, the Congo line. That's it.
Yeah.
If a pandemic happens, they're not even going to know about it. They're just checking out. We're worrying about all these things. We have to worry about bills. We have to worry about who's going to win the election. They're not even going to know who's going to win the election.
No.
Because it doesn't matter to them. They are completely checking out of society and just living on a time capsule until they rot away and die.
And to each their own. I've heard rumors, and again, this is just rumor. I don't know if this is factual. But I've heard rumors that, if they start serving a lot of ice cream and stuff, that should be concerning to the passengers because that means that they need freezer room for bodies. Yeah. That's what I've heard as a rumor. I don't know if that's legitimate or not. It makes sense. Like, but you would think on the ship, right? If it's so let's talk about demographics. These people, if they're willing to spend $100,000 on a cruise ship, my guess is they're probably at least 50 years old. 60, somewhere in there, minimum.
They're in the golden years.
They're retired, right, for the most part. Or they're just extremely wealthy and they don't care. So if I'm the cruise ship, I'm like, what's the probability that even 10% of these people are going to die in the next 3 years?
They're all going to die on that cruise
do we
ship.
Have on here? You know what I mean?
I mean, if there's any cruise ship that's going to have the facilities to handle old people passing away, it's this one. I mean, that is the intention. They are going on this cruise ship to die. And I think they're going to do everything they can to make it happen. I think if they make it to year 10 and they see the time's running out and they haven't died yet, then they're going to be ramping up the drinking. They're going to start pouring those drinks a little bit stronger. Because I don't think they have any intention of seeing their family again. They're all having a goodbye party probably. That's essentially just a funeral that they get to attend. They say, well, this is the last time I'll see you guys. The only communication these people are going to have with their family, even though they probably have the option to fly back, and they can just come and go as they please, they're not going to do that. They don't care about their family. Like, my mom would never go on this trip because she cares about her family.
Of course.
These people don't care about their family. They're going to send video logs to their family once a week, like Interstellar, and that's the only contact they're going to have with them for the rest of their lives.
I don't know what to say. I would never do that. I just, like, even when we were down in Cancun, when I was talking about our trip, 10 days was long enough for
By
us
day
to be
4
there.
on any vacation, I'm ready to get back to my life.
Dude, yeah, 100%. Don't get me wrong, like, the room's great, right? Like, you pay for awesome things, but it kind of becomes like, oh, look, they're doing the pool dance again today. Yeah. It's the same song that they did yesterday. And it's great for the newcomers that, on day 7, you kind of know some people that have been there for a while, and then you notice new people, and they're just having a blast. But again, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to be ready to go in 3 days. Yeah. Like, I don't care if it's all-inclusive. I can get ice cream anytime I want. But even being there on the resort, it's kind of like, I'm ready. Like I've seen the same thing over and over, and like you said, I'm sure these people have probably already thought about that and they don't care. But I feel like there's gonna be some regrets there. Like, and maybe, I mean, the thing did say that they could choose to do shorter trips. I don't know if you
I
caught
think
that.
one couple that was highlighted, I think they only did like 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's others, it said too, like you could do months. So like if I was hesitant, I'd do like a 4-month stint. My question to that though is, let's say I want to do 4 months from January to April. And they're like, okay, well, here are the ports that we're going to be at if you want to start in January, or the port, whatever. That means I would have to probably fly to that country to get to that port and then board, right? So
that is how it is anyways, though.
Okay.
Like Carter and Veda, my sister and my brother-in-law, they went to a cruise and they had to fly into Puerto Rico to begin the cruise. So I think that is a typical part of it, is that you have to fly to a different country. Because I think that these cruise lines, I mean, they are going all year round anyways.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that the actual the operation of the cruise is probably pretty similar to how it is normally. They're just renting it out for longer periods. And I don't know. I wonder if this would have been possible 10 years ago, or are things just so crazy now that people are just willing to just give it all up and go live in their own little bubble?
I mean, what do you think the future holds? Do you think that eventually people will start living on the ocean? I mean, it was brought up like global warming, right? They say one of the biggest issues with global warming is that land that is below sea level is going to start flooding. For example, pretty much the half south of Florida is going to be underwater. Louisiana is going to be underwater completely. So it makes you wonder, like, how many people are going to start going to floating cities, per se.
Yeah, they've talked about that. I forgot what the brand name is of these things, but there was some sort of concept, and it might have even been a GoFundMe for these floating island cities, like nations almost. And the logistics of that is just a complete nightmare, and it never works out.
So you said you like living on the edge or whatever, traveling on the edge. Would you go to Afghanistan? Because you said it's for the boys, dude.
Yeah, no, I was serious about that on the last episode. I mean, based on the videos that I've
seen in there and stuff, and
yeah, I've seen videos of a guy, just a white guy that was touring, and he was trying to show off Afghanistan. He had a guide. You know, he went there and he was looking at the street food and getting some street food. Looked pretty good. He was looking at all the shops and the trinkets. He got a turban, and then he got to go meet with some black market weapons dealers. And shooting FAMAS.
I was just saying, you start hearing the whistle come down.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we need to hide because here comes a bomb.
you can buy a mortar. But, like, he got to experience all these things. It looked like a good trip, man, compared to any other. I swear to God, I would go there if I knew that I had a trusted guide that was going to help me negotiate with the Taliban if I did have to deal with them. You know, there's probably some of that, but yeah. So I can sort of see the appeal of these cruises, but there's something about the boomer generation.
Like living on the edge or whatever, traveling on the edge. Would you go to Afghanistan? Because you said it's for the boys, dude.
Yeah, no, I was serious about that on the last episode. I mean, based on the videos that I've seen
in there and stuff, and
yeah, I've seen videos of a guy, just a white guy that was touring, and he was trying to show off Afghanistan. He had a guide. You know, he went there and he was looking at the street food and getting some street food. Looked pretty good. He was looking at all the shops and the trinkets. He got a turban, and then he got to go meet with some black market weapons dealers. And shooting FAMAS.
I was just saying, you start hearing the whistle come down.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we need to hide because here comes a bomb.
you can buy a mortar. But, like, he got to experience all these things. It looked like a good trip, man, compared to any other. I swear to God, I would go there if I knew that I had a trusted guide that was going to help me negotiate with the Taliban if I did have to deal with them. You know, there's probably some of that, but yeah. So I can sort of see the appeal of these cruises, but there's something about the boomer generation that loves the cruises. They just want to be pampered, and they just, if they could go on one of those Wall-E chairs and not even have to walk anywhere and just say, bring me to the pool, and just click it, and then they just float over there. That's what they would do.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and maybe they had to work hard in their younger years, and in their older years, they just don't want to have to do anything. Yeah. But there's something about that older generation that just loves cruises. My dad goes on a cruise like 3 times a year, and he just loves them.
Well, look at timeshares. Kind of similar, right? A lot of the boomer generation loves timeshares. And the problem is timeshares are like the worst investment you can ever make, even worse than a car.
Yeah. But when you get scammed, it's very hard to come to terms with that scam. They're not going to let themselves believe that they got screwed by that timeshare.
Right.
Was it you that was telling me that your family has a timeshare or something like that, dude, that they want you to inherit?
No, they don't want us to inherit. At this point, they feel that it's almost a burden because they're like, well, if we die, we don't know what's going to happen. Because what happened before was the grandparents were like, hey, do you want this? And the parents were like, sure. So they bought it for like $1.
Okay.
And then after that, like they bought the week. It's like per week, you know? So they bought that week for $1. And then the next year kicks in the normal resort fees and stuff.
Okay.
And so last year was like $780. Well, this year was like $950 or something. And the place looks like it's stuck in like 1965.
Yeah,
like it's everything's like breaking down, and it's like,
why would you invest?
You're paying over $900 a year, or per year for 1 week. Well, technically, let me see. I think it's 10 days, but regardless, you're paying $900 for a week to 10 days for something that there are things breaking down in here. I mean, it literally looks like it's stuck in the 60s or 70s. It's old wood everywhere.
Yeah.
And, and I'm just like, it's not worth it, man. But the problem is they don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah, they have to die to get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially. but then the problem becomes, right, because we just talked about this. Yeah. The problem becomes, who does it default to? I'll tell you right now, it ain't defaulting to us. I'm not signing that.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
is it a lease or is it?
It's a contract. It's a contract. I mean, it is the devil's deed, dude. Like, the fine print is insane on that, So.
Yeah, that's weird. I just wouldn't even. If I had to go to a resort where they made me go to one of those meetings, I just wouldn't go. Like, are they going to come and kick you out of the resort?
Right. Well, and the other problem is, I think I told you this, they want to sell it, right? They're like, we're selling it to get out of it, not to gain profit. So they walk into the main hall where, like, they put up the local news, right? Like lost dog, kind of like what you see in your grocery store on the cardboard board. Mm-hmm. And, like, there are tons of units for sale.
Oh,
and
great.
No one's picked it up, dude.
No.
And so I told them, I'm like, good luck, because I don't know how you're going to sell it out of the 60 that are already up there.
And they probably got quite a few years left, right? I mean, at least...
As far as life?
Yeah, life.
Yeah,
I mean, they're
at
not,
least 10, 15 years minimum,
Yeah, man. So, they're stuck in that. And how much is it going to be at that time? I mean, that's just something that, man, they're just stuck with that.
All right, so the second story we wanted to talk about was the fertility rate was down 3% from... Was it last year or a couple years ago? Yeah. It was down 3% from a recent time, the last time they checked it, which was like the lowest it's ever been since like 1979 in the late 70s. And it said it was 55 births per 1,000 women. And it said they deem it to like easier access to contraception, other societal problems that are arising from it, like independency and stuff like that with women's roles, right? To me, this doesn't surprise me, to be completely honest with you. In fact, I recently watched a sociological professor talk about how the roles are actually changing. You're actually seeing more men start to stay at home and more women working, almost reversing the... what happened before 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't really surprise me in that fact. Not to mention, you ask any 18 to 26-year-old girl if they want to have kids, I would be willing to bet out of 100 girls you would ask, probably 85 to 90 of them would say, they don't plan on having kids.
Ever? You think that they wouldn't
Ever.
plan? Really?
Ever. Yep.
You think 80% of women say they wouldn't want to have kids?
You go.
That seems a little high.
Go out on the U of M college campus and ask them. I guarantee you, there's going to be several women saying, "No, I have no plans of having children."
Yeah, several, I believe. I mean, I do think that there's a lot of women now that say they don't want to have children. I mean, I know a couple women that are in their mid to late 30s now that decided that they're just not going to have kids.
Right.
And I think oftentimes that topic does come back later on in life, but it's also tough for a woman because by the time that they do reconsider and they do want to have kids, then it's a little bit late in life.
Late,
I actually have a excerpt from that article. So it says that the CDC data shows that births have continued to shift to older mothers. So the birth rate is now highest among women ages 30 to 40, with about 95 births for every 1,000 women in that group.
Okay.
And then the data also shows that the teen birth rate dropped to a record low in 2023. So there's only 13 births for every 1,000 girls aged 15 to 19.
I mean,
so is that the problem? Is there not enough teen births?
I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. To be honest with you, I don't. I mean, I mean, for example, a source that I listen to, I won't give the name or anything because of certain political views or something like that, right? But they say that if you are in a solid relationship, whether you've been together for however many years, it's going well, or you're married in that relationship, if you do that before you have kids, you are automatically in medium income. You're automatically in middle class. Automatic. So if you don't do that, like 15 to 19-year-olds, the chances of your child having a better life is lower than the typical middle class, double income, like more established, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and so I think the biggest thing on people's minds right now when it comes to having a family is I think a lot of people would say that they would like to, but they just can't afford it. The cost of living is too high. And, I recently had a daughter less than a year ago, and it was an interesting scenario for me. I mean, I definitely was somebody that wanted to make sure that I had my ducks in a row before I had a kid. And I think a lot of people want to make sure that happens. I think that we look at the way that our parents lived, and I wanted my life to be as stable as my parents' life seemed when I was a kid. Well, when we made a decision to have a kid, I was making a shitload of money. So I was like, we're going to have a kid, no problem.
We're going to buy a mansion.
I mean, things were looking really good. Yeah. Like, there was not a better time. 9 months went by, and I was in the hospital room looking at my newborn daughter, and it was the low point of my career.
At least you have something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the bills are getting paid. So, we're at least going to be able to provide her a good life.
Yes, yeah. So there is that. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that the fertility rate's down. I guess just from what I've heard and read, it doesn't surprise me because, like I said, I think a lot of the gender roles from previous talks, we talked about trans, stuff like that. I think a lot of the gender roles is changing that. I do. I think that's part of the reason why that is.
Well, things are going to be easier, I think, as time goes on. The number one hurdle when it comes to having a kid is the logistics of getting them to daycare, the child care itself. I'm very lucky where since I run my own business, I can do things from home. I get to spend every single day with my daughter. So I am a work from home dad beta male, okay? My wife goes to work every single day and I stay home. And I do make money. Even if you have a work from home job though, if you don't run your own business and you have to be working for 8 hours a day, I mean, it's not possible to watch a kid. If you don't have somebody that is like a parent of yours that can watch the kid and provide that child care, it's very, very difficult to pay all this money to daycare and then try to get ahead in life.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, I know that my grandparents were kind of poor back when they had, my dad, when they were young parents. But now they're pretty well off. And like I said before, we try to be as established as our parents were when they had us. But I wonder if he wasn't as established and stable as I thought, because obviously I didn't know the details, and I still don't know all the details of how his life was. I had the view of a child where I didn't know all the factors that were at play. Throughout my life, they went through a divorce. They both had to file bankruptcy. I mean, they probably went through some tough times, but they still raised a kid anyways, and they're both in a really good spot now. And I wonder if we don't accept the fact in our generation that when you have kids and you're having to pay for the highest rates of childcare when they're young babies, that when you have kids, like, you kind of just got to be poor for a little while. Like, things are going to be hard.
Yeah.
And then, if you can tough through that, though, then later on in your life, you'll be able to be more established. Like, once my daughter goes to school and I now have 7-8 hours a day freed up, like, it's going to be way easier for me to get things done again. And I know that my life is going to completely change, right? But we just got to get through that first 5 years. And I think people are less and less willing to live through that uncomfortable time. And maybe it is way harder now, but it might not be as much harder as we maybe think it is.
I would agree 100% on that. I mean, a little bit about my life story and stuff like that. Like,
right.
I am a huge proponent in going through the fire makes you harder on the back end, right? Makes you better. They say to make better steel or whatever, right? You got to put it in the fire. It's kind of the same thing. Like, you got to go through hell to make yourself better. Maybe hell's not the right term, but you got to go through some hardships because you learn a lot from that and you gain a lot more from that. I'm a huge proponent of that. I don't want people to purposely go through hardships, but there's something to be said about if you can get through a hardship, you're going to be that much better on the back end. There's a lot of times in my life where I did have to make a decision at my own time. And to be honest with you, there is some luck within that. I didn't know if I was making the right decision on certain things that we can talk about at a later time. I'm not going to go down my whole entire life story, but there's decisions that sometimes do come with luck. You just so happen to make the right decision and then things become better, right? It's people that make those mistakes that it'll sit on them forever. For example, you get an 18-year-old kid, right? Say he's driving down the road and he kills somebody. That kid will never be able to get a job that pays well. He'll be a felon for the rest of his life. He's 18. He'll be a felon for the rest of his life. His decision that day, bad decision, will forever change his life until the day he dies. That's the way it is. Sometimes you get lucky with your decisions. Sometimes you get unlucky with your decisions. There's just that. And it's dark to think about, but it's true. And it's sad, but it's true. You know? Correct.
But I wonder how much of the decision to not have a kid due to finances is because of the fact that they can't provide for the kid, and it's a selfless decision to not have it versus a selfish decision because you're not going to be able to spend as much on yourself.
Correct.
And I think now a lot of people, they value their independence more, and they value what they think they could be. People are more entrepreneurial now than they ever have been, and I think they have more wild ambitions now on average than they ever have. And I think it's those things that people are holding on to. And I think even though, like I just said earlier, that it's hard for me to imagine having a second kid right now, I think if I really am honest about it, it probably is more about how, like, I have a decent amount of time to myself now, even with a daughter. There's times when Christy can watch my 9-month-old daughter and I can go do what I need to do, whether I'm working or just like relaxing, and then vice versa. We can take responsibility of our child while the other person does what they got to do. And that kind of gives you a break. I think that if we had a second child, I would have pretty much no time to myself. And I think in previous generations, I think people were more willing to sacrifice that time. There wasn't so much entertainment opportunity in the past that people weren't willing to give up as there is now.
Yeah. The good news is that the world's not really in a birth crisis, right? We're not at the point where the death rate is much higher than the birth rate, right? We're not at the point where it's like, okay, like we need to actually start taking a look at like getting births happening because, we're going to run out of population. It's just not going to happen.
I listened to something. I don't know if you've ever heard this YouTube channel. His name is Jake Tran, and he does these really awesome, like entertaining sort of like documentary videos where he just explains different things about the world, whether it's like economics of banking and like the real estate industry or kind of the scam behind credit cards. But one of them was about China's issue with their population. And so one big topic is my entire life has been, is China going to be the next superpower? They're on their way up. And it seems like that could be the case. But one of their glaring weaknesses is that they've had a policy against births for a very long time. Yep. So they had the one-child policy, where if you had more than one child, you would face a heavy tax, and they heavily penalized having more than one child. I forgot what the reason for that was exactly, but now they're facing a situation where the average age of the worker is getting higher and higher. And especially in the U.S., when we have a situation where, we have systems in place in the government like the retirement system, Social Security, where it requires a young workforce to pay for the older generations. Correct. But the older generation is so much older, we might face similar issues to that as well. And I mean, I think China's number one issue is that they're going to have a massive problem where the people that are no longer in the workforce don't have enough young people to support them. And how much longer until we have that same situation?
It's very interesting. I mean, they've already been talking about Social Security disappearing or struggling to keep it funded in the next 10 to 15 years. So that might make it worse if that's the case, if it keeps going. Like, let's say next year there's a 4% drop. I mean, then maybe they need to start looking at government will be like, hey, we'll give you $15,000 if you have a kid or something, or your
Donald
medical's
Trump
free,
has been saying that he's going to pay for IVF treatment.
I did see that, yep.
And I've been hearing more and more people having to go through that, even in my personal life. Yep. And that kind of is related to like people deciding to have kids later on in life. So, Christy had her first daughter when she was in her 20s, when you sort of expect to have a kid, right? Her second daughter, the one that we have, she had when she was like 36, right? And so she's having kids far later. I think she got pregnant at 35 or something like that. But on her first appointment, the prenatal appointment, they said that technically she's considered geriatric when it comes to the pregnancy, because by the time that our daughter's born, she'll be past that limit, which I think is age 36. Okay. And so she's past the time when you really should be having kids as a woman, and health risks start to get more and more common after that age. But there can be a lot of issues that come with waiting, an extra 10 years until you're more established. Well, now you can have more trouble. I think we would be most comfortable if we waited 2 or 3 years before having another kid, to sort of like get our daughter into school and then, maybe just save up more money. But that really is not an option, because Christy doesn't want to be having a baby at 40 years old. And by the time they're out of high school, she's in her late 50s.
Yeah, for sure. That's something to think about. So, is there anything else you wanted to add on that, or?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. You want to do the third one?
Sure. There was a family, either their father or mother passed away and left behind the estate, and a part of that was the house, the family house. It gets put up for sale by the family, and one man in the family, one of the kids, was very upset about this, and he ended up killing his 4 siblings and then killing himself.
Naturally.
Yep, over the sale of this house. Things got very heated in those negotiations. And this is a crazy story, not just because of the murder-suicide. I mean, that obviously is shocking. But this just really shines a light on how big of an issue estate sales are. Like, I am in real estate, and so sometimes you help people where they're selling the house that they grew up in, that their parents owned until they died, and then now they all have to come together and figure out how to get this taken care of. And, a lot of the people that are dying right now of old age are the baby boomers. So they have 5, 6 kids that all have to come to an agreement here. Nothing will tear apart your family faster than dying and having to have them figure out what to do with your estate. Yep. There's so much drama with that. It is insane. And so many people say that they never would have thought that their family would have bickered like that. But everybody wants something different, and families will almost kill each other over it on a regular basis.
I mean, I wouldn't say murder would happen, but would that surprise you on our mom's side of the family?
No, I can see that.
100% I could see fists being thrown. So first of all, I already have a will made.
Yeah, that's smart.
I had it made when I got hired as a cop because I'm like, I could die tomorrow. So, there's that, which, by the way, I do need to update it. But besides that, the people that own that house, the parents, whomever, need to make it clear in their will. Like, if I was the parent and you were my kid, I'd be like, Zach is the one who's going to be in charge of selling the house. The proceeds will be split up 1/6 apiece by the house, and it's going to be left at that. Do what you want with the funds after that. And then if I might even go as far as to say, when the house is sold for $300,000 and you make $200 off of it, I would say we're going to get like a lawyer or some type of accountant to come up with the exact amount that every person gets. And that's going to be in paper, because you don't want 1 penny being off or something, right? For that person to be like, well, why'd they get a penny more than I did? So
the best thing that you can do is, before you die, enjoy your money, but when it's time to go, you sell everything so you have a cash value, whatever that is. Give it all to charity. So there's nothing left, and your family is going to spit on your grave. Your kids will spit on your grave. But they will be united in their hatred for you.
Correct, yeah.
And so for the health of the family, that is the best thing to do.
Can you imagine, if, Elon Musk dies and gives everything to charity?
That would be insane.
And his kids or family are like, you couldn't even toss us a couple billion, you know? Imagine.
That would, but that might be the best thing. I mean, nothing really good can come of your kid if you just give them everything in the world.
Correct. I
don't even know that guy's name, the kid's name, because it's X-Ash.
Yeah, it's like he's an alien or something.
It's like it's something that's a button on a calculator.
Yeah. Whole sign.
Right. It was good that you're doing that early.
What's that?
Doing a will and everything. People wait too long for it, and then
it's too late.
Yeah, and then it's that's when you start forgetting people and things, when you do it when you're 95 years old.
Yeah,
and it's like you can't even remember your whole family, and then it ends up being a mess.
To be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have if I didn't become a cop.
Right.
Just because the odds of you dying are just much less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't. A lot of people think, oh, are you going to be shot? I mean, it literally could be like, I could be on the side of the road helping a motorist in the winter, and some dude slips off the road and kills me.
Yeah.
It could be something like that. It doesn't need to be like this heroic, shootout or something like that. It literally could be like some dude flying down the road slips and I get tossed 100 yards,
Right.
So, but
it's a wise decision. Yeah. And, that actually reminds me of life insurance. So you referred me the guy that works with a lot of the people in your police department to set up my Roth IRA and stuff. And they kind of provide 2 services, these personal accountants, whatever they're called. What is the title of this guy? He's not an accountant, but
like a financial advisor?
Yeah, financial advisor, right. Yeah. So their work is free to just set up my investment account and probably get paid commission off of the stocks that I buy every month. But then you could pay an additional fee for more in-depth help. And then the other thing is that you can buy health insurance. So all these guys also sell health insurance, and I think that's a big part of how they make money, or life insurance, I'm sorry. Well, at the time when I spoke to him, I was 22 years old, and he's trying to sell me on life insurance. And I'm just like, dude, I do not need this. And I can sort of see why I might need it now. Like he said, well, when your life starts to change, you start having kids and stuff, well, then maybe you want to talk about it more now. I'm like, yeah, maybe this is the time to do it. But, like, I don't know, man. The chances of something happening seem really low. And I think that if I did die, like, Christy's still young enough where she's like, she can find another guy.
Yeah, I guess.
When,
really sad when the Burnsville, those 2 officers and the paramedic that got killed.
Yeah.
Very sad. He actually, I can't remember if he either knew them personally. So he used to work for Burnsville. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't.
So that's where he used to work. So hit him a little closer to home, right? I don't think he knew them personally, but that was his department, right? So same thing. About a week later, he called me up. And he's like, here's the deal. It's my understanding that they did not have life insurance. And so it kind of leaves the family with kids like in this free fall of a mom with 3 kids. Like, how am I going to, in a bigger house, right? Like bigger bills, stuff like that. Now, thankfully, like the outpouring of, they've been, for the most part, taken care of, right? I am in no way saying that they're rich, but their needs, not wants, but needs have been met. And that's what's important, right? So thankfully, the community was big enough, not only civilian, but law enforcement, to help them out and get the families to where they need to be to kind of push them in the right direction. But we did have that conversation of the life insurance, and very interesting. And, one thing with this, to kind of change it a little bit, the guy ran into the cul-de-sac screaming and then shot himself in public. Like this guy.
Yeah.
So, that's wild. Can you imagine being like an 8-year-old just playing basketball in your driveway and you just see this guy just make his head look like a flower?
No, that would be...
that's wild, dude. That's next level. That kid's going to need therapy for the rest of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of stuff can just happen, man. You can even see a car crash that's just as gruesome as that.
Oh, yeah.
Like Angie, my stepmom, she's a nurse, and you have a responsibility when you're a nurse where if you see something happen, like a car crash, you have to pull over and stop and take care of the people.
Yep.
So she saw this car crash where the car gets hit by a semi, and then she goes and stops, and she went to try and save him, but his head was like almost off of his body as she was like holding him, semis will do that, but it's just like I can't. And then I go over to her house like the next day, and she's just like cooking a casserole,
just chilling.
I guess she probably has seen some pretty bad stuff during her career, but like I would have probably canceled the gathering that day. Like, hey, we'll reschedule for next week. I'm not really feeling it,
Yeah.
But the way that she was able to just handle that is pretty impressive. But a normal person that doesn't have that job, that didn't take the commitment to be in those situations, that would just the visuals of that alone would appear in my eyelids every time that I blink.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Kudos to her. They say like the average cop at least in this state lives to be like 68. That's our average.
That's pretty low.
That's our average lifespan.
Do you think that getting killed on the job contributes to that, or is it
some of it,
or is it alcoholism?
Some of it, a lot of it's medical. But my point to that is like the amount of like traumatic incidents that we encounter every year. I think the average person like sees up to 2 to 4 in their lifetime and 80 to 90 years that they live, whereas cops every year see likely more than between like 10 and 20, if not more, a year, not just like in your lifetime.
Yeah, so it wears on you.
Correct. So like your mental health and stuff, like if you're not keeping up on it, like by the time you're 60, you literally could be going nuts because, just all the stuff that you've seen. If you haven't dealt with it properly, if you've been pushing it down for that long, like eventually it's going to come up. I remember when I first got hired at my first agency, one of the best advice I ever got from a veteran cop was he said, I know you're a rookie. I know you want to go to like crazy calls and see crazy things, but he's like, your mind is a filing cabinet, and there is a capacity on that filing cabinet. So he said every incident you go to, whether it's traumatic or not, fills that filing cabinet. So if you are so gung-ho the first 10 years of your career and you just want to see everything, even when you don't need to show up to the scene, you're going to shorten your career, because at some point you're going to be like, I can't do this anymore, or, that's going to weigh on you in the future. And I've kept that with me. Like, there's times where, like, I don't need to go to accident fatals, right? Like, if that comes up, like, if there's already 5 of us out there with medics, like, what's an extra me going to do? Like, do traffic control? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I got to stay available for call. Like, the city still needs help. Like, that's not just this one. So anyway, the point is, the life insurance is important and stuff like that, and the wills and all that. So that's kind of what I got out of that story, is like all the issues with the family members and stuff like that. So the last story we have here is on UFOs, or they're called UAPs, and I think that's what does UAP stand for? Like unidentified aerial projectile or something like that, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot. I don't know.
So last year.
Phenomena.
Phenomena. Yeah. So last year, they held, like, C-SPAN holds these, like, committee hearings that anyone can watch, and it was on the government essentially admitting that there was a UFO program, or some type, like, not only program, but like recovery of UFOs if they got their hands on them. The guy's name was David Grush. It sounded like, so they interviewed 3 military guys. David was like, seemed like he knew most of the information, and he's just like, yep, we've known about UFOs, and they're slowly kind of chipping away at the iceberg that is the mystery of UFOs. There's been several instances of people claiming, military pilots, seeing things that do not make sense, go against the laws of physics. You ever heard of a guy by the name of Bob Lazar?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bob Lazar talked about his story where he worked in Area 51, and, some people are saying he's saying it for fame, but at the end of the day, like, Bob's like, nope, I worked in Area 51. I worked on an aircraft that was not of this earth, and he's like, the best way I can describe it is it violated all of our physics that we know of on Earth. It's not possible. He's like, these things are not possible. And I've heard military pilots say they've seen these unidentified aircrafts traveling at significant speeds and then stopping on a dime. Again, same thing. They're like, the physics is not possible for our aircraft to do that. It's just not a thing. Anything from missiles, drones, manned aircraft, it's not a thing that us humans know of as technology on this earth. What are your thoughts initially?
Well, I mean, about aliens in general, I do tend to believe these government people that, like Bob Lazar, or there was another Air Force pilot, I believe.
The captain guy?
Yeah,
I forgot
he
his
said
name.
that, I think he might have been like he described it a certain way, like by the shape of it, like a pill or something like that.
Yep, and it would rotate and stuff.
Exactly, and so, like, I do believe their accounts when I hear them, but there's a heavy amount of skepticism, though, just because, for various reasons. Like, for instance, we used to see videos of this stuff all the time, similar to ghosts. There's so many old footage of ghosts that we just don't get anymore now that cameras are better. Like, this is sort of a cliche argument, but it's like, how come there isn't any clear footage? When we used to have so much shitty footage, when clear footage wasn't an option, how come now there isn't one clear video of UFOs or Bigfoot or ghosts like there used to be? I feel like at the very least, there was a lot more fakers back then and scammers back then. The other thing is, when we do get a clear video or a picture, something that goes viral on the internet, it always ends up being a hoax. 11 months ago, Mexico, well, I don't know what the actual story is here, but it was reported that Mexico had found an extraterrestrial life form. It looked kind of like E.T., and they presented it in a coffin. And I think it ended up not being the Mexican government. I don't know what that was there.
I know what you're talking about.
But it ended up not being as it was reported. So nothing came of it. There was another lady that took a picture of something and posted it on Reddit, and it was this crazy looking, weird, it was like a small, skinny alien thing with like a long tail, and she took a picture of it and said that she found it like in her neighbor's yard, and it was this really big thing, and it ends up being like a prop, for a movie. Like everything, every single time, any proof that comes about ends up being fake. And it's just baffling to me where if there are all of these instances of encounters that there isn't any proof of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, they said that in the C-SPAN. They said that, the problem that this David Grush guy was saying is a lot of it was like hearsay. There was no like specific facts on anything. But I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, especially the captain, the pilot guy, Bob Lazar, I can see now he's very descriptive. He has all his stuff. I tend to lean more towards he is telling the truth, but I see motives as to why he might lie, right? Like financial motives, other stuff like that. The thing is I think if there are truly UFOs, which people have to understand, UFOs is unidentified flying object, right? So a UFO could be something tonight that you see in the sky that's not an alien, but you just can't identify it, right? So I think if they're hiding extraterrestrial items, things, bodies, whatever it may be, there is if I am the government, there is not a chance I am telling people, because you look at what COVID, let's talk about COVID. They literally, so for people that don't know, in Minnesota, pretty much the first Wednesday of every month, they run tornado sirens, okay? The paranoia around COVID was so high that they decided to not run the sirens during COVID, during the months that were the highest of illness, stuff like that, because they were concerned that people were going to think that the world was ending.
Like as the purge?
Correct.
Yeah. That's the anarchy siren?
Correct.
Right.
So if I'm the government, I'm going to be like, absolutely not. We're not telling these people. These people are going to go nuts. They're going to be like,
that makes sense. I mean, there's countless secrets that
ignorance is bliss, man. Yes. You know what I mean?
I mean, we know that things come out all the time with these whistleblowers where we know that governments keep secrets that are far less consequential than aliens, right? I mean, that would be mind-blowing. That would change everything, right? But they'll cover things up about assassinations and things, which is far less of a big deal than aliens.
Yeah.
So I definitely believe that if they are working on these things, they would be keeping it a secret.
Absolutely.
But I think they would do everything in their power to keep it a secret. And so the one thing that makes me not believe Bob Lazar and people like that is that he's still alive. Because if Boeing is killing people for whistleblowing, why would the government not be killing these people?
But because I think the people, the alien population, the people that believe in aliens, Bob Lazar is like their king, right? So I think if he were to go or just mysteriously die, I think that would be like they would destroy Area 51.
But I feel like if people really were whistleblowing truth on these aliens, and that's something that, if it was verified to be true, would just open up the biggest can of worms ever for the government. That would change everyone's perception of reality, that they would kill him. Even if it was obvious, that conspiracy is better than having proof come to light that they've been hiding aliens.
I wouldn't really consider Bob Lazar a whistleblower, though, because still a lot of his stuff is hearsay. Like, they're going to deny everything. They're going to make him look nuts, which is what they have done. And they left it at that. Like, and I wonder, it makes me wonder, like, would the government be like, no, this is a bigger, higher risk. So, like, if we take him out, that, like, something of this, magnitude would be, like, catastrophic. Like, who knows? Like, if Bob dies, like, automatic files get sent somewhere that get disseminated to half the world or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm sure he's probably thought about that. Like, I need to have a carrot over their head because if they do this to me, like, this is what's going to happen type of thing. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I mean, but then you talk about life, right? Like, there's got to be life out there. There's probably some type of aliens doing this exact same thing that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
That are like Alien Ryan and Alien Zach that are talking about the exact same thing. It's like the alternate universe stuff, right? So there's life, but it just, if I'm the government, I can't get around telling civilians that there are aircraft that if they wanted to kill us, they could in 2 seconds, because people will go nuts. I mean, the whole world will go insane.
Nothing good would come of that.
Nothing good. Like, because that'd be most people's first question is, okay, how do we stop them if they want to kill us? And the question is, we don't know. Okay? So now you're telling massive population that you don't know what's going to happen. You ever seen the show Don't Look Up?
I was going to mention that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. If there was an asteroid about to hit the Earth, do you think they would tell us?
So in the show, or the movie, right, he goes and visits Madam President, and they're like, what's the probability here? And didn't he say it's like 99.9% or something like that? They're like, yeah. And they're like, no. Like, that can't be right. Like, can we tell the public like 70% or, 60%, kind of dumb it down a little bit or whatever? And like, he's like, no, like, this is going to happen. Like, we're all going to die pretty much. And they just would not come around to the fact of the paranoia, right? They're like, well, we can't tell people because the world's going to go insane, So just something to think of,
Yeah, it's 100% true. I mean, then it would become like the Purge. We were just talking about. I mean, if people knew that was going to happen, then people would go insane.
If it was 100% that you're going to die in like a month, like the whole world's going to blow up, yeah. I mean, there would be no
Imagine
law.
if that news came out that there was an asteroid coming and it's like basically guaranteed, but then by some grace of God it didn't happen. Like, would there be any marriages left at that point? Like, people's actions during that time where they thought they were going to die would ruin every marriage, every commitment. Nobody would have a job anymore.
Yeah.
How would we pick up the pieces after that, let's say, 2 weeks of just pure debauchery that people go through where they don't give a fuck about anything? How do we pick up the pieces after that where now you got to go back to your job?
Like, if we live?
Yeah, like the asteroid ends up just disappearing. Yeah. You spent the last 2 weeks fucking everybody in sight. Like, you haven't shown up to work. You told your boss to go fuck himself.
Now,
and now you got to go back to work.
Yeah.
And like just live a normal life. Yeah. Now you got to try to rekindle your marriage.
Yeah. The Twilight Zone, I'll find the episode for you. The old school Twilight Zone. Do you know what the Twilight Zone is?
Yeah.
So the black and white version, they did a similar story on that, a similar episode. Basically, this guy is like a huge bookworm. He wants to be left alone from people, and like people just annoy him. He has a bank job. Every time he gets off of work, he goes to the library, pretty much puts himself in like an office, and just gets away from the world, right? Well, he's reading these books. Big explosion happens. He somehow survives. Walks outside. Turns out there was a massive nuclear war, and he's the last one remaining on Earth. Okay? He's like elated because he's like, oh, finally I have all these books. People can leave me alone. Well, the problem is that his one pair of glasses he ends up breaking, and he can't read. So, kind of similar to like, now what am I going to do after I survived a major incident, and I have to deal with this, right? So, something interesting. I'll send you a video later, too, after this episode that Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist, he talks about an asteroid that's supposed to hit us in like 2035 or something like that. So,
really? I mean, the chances can't be guaranteed on that, otherwise.
So there's a Goldilocks hole, he calls it.
Okay.
So the asteroid came early, like in the 2010s decade, and looped around. But because of the gravitational pull, the loop gets closer each time. And he said if it passes through this Goldilocks hole the next time it comes around, the odds of it hitting us are higher, but not anywhere to where it'd be like 100%. It's pretty low.
We do get hit by asteroids all the time.
Yeah, this one's huge.
Okay.
This one is like bigger than the Mexico asteroid. Yeah. So
Okay.
So
I wonder if we have the ability to shoot a nuke up there or something like that. Like, what asteroid stopping ability do we have?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But he does talk about that because the beauty of it is if you can change its trajectory just ever so slightly, that will forever change its timeline, right? So, like, it's like if a car's 100 miles away and you turn the wheel 1/36th of an inch, by the time it gets 100 miles away, it's going to be way over
just exponentially get
correct,
farther away.
Correct, as time goes. So I don't know what that is. And like I said, the percentage that even goes to the Goldilocks hole is very minimal. And if it does, it's still minimal that it'll hit Earth.
Yeah.
But if it does hit Earth, it's going to be not like extinction, but it's going to kill a lot of people. So there's that for you guys to look forward to, But I'll send you that later.
All right, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching the episode. If you made it this far, please subscribe and share this with all of your friends and family. That's the best way that you can support the show. We post shorts every week or every day of the week, and we will see you next Wednesday. Thank you.